Welcome back to the show. One of the top issues for American voters is health care. It's why President Trump's embrace of the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, was so crucial to his victory in 2024. In particular, RFK Jr. was a draw for many with his iconoclastic views on the medical industry, which many Americans lost trust in since the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of the overreach there. Yet for many, myself included, Bobby Kennedy's views really do go a little too far. As head of HHS, he has repeatedly cited false and retracted studies to suggest that vaccines cause autism, contributing to a general vaccine skepticism that has resulted in a horrifying measles outbreak in nearly half the country. So my question is, will RFK Jr. and the MAHA movement help the president in the midterms, or is it going to hurt him in the midterms? Here with us now is the absolute best person to discuss this, Jillian Michaels. Jillian, thank you so much for being here. So tell us a little bit about the wins and the losses of the MAHA movement as you see it.
Okay, let's start with the wins. And I think most people can get on board with these. So he rebuilt the food pyramid. And I want you to understand that the food pyramid controls hundreds of billions in subsidy dollars. So Brooke Rollins came out and she said she's going to make 250,000 retailers that provide food to SNAP families carry healthier, more nutritious foods. This is going to impact what our kids eat in public schools. It's going to impact what our military eats. He removed the black box warning for hormone replacement therapy for women, which was one of the most botched studies and has such a huge impact on women's health. That's a massive deal. He's closing the grass loophole. So the grass loophole is the generally recognized as safe loophole that allowed big food companies to slide in thousands of chemicals into our foods without safety testing. Reevaluating baby formula, removing heavy metals from baby formula, ending regulatory capture so that our government health agencies don't consistently have a revolving door with private industry, like Pfizer, for example, then running over to the FDA, approving a drug and running back over to Pfizer, having stock in the company. So these are all monster wins. Conversations about vaccines are going to be very nuanced. So, for example, you don't appreciate his position there, but what he did do was move vaccines like COVID or hepatitis B, which are very controversial for parents, onto what's called shared decision. So in other words, those vaccines are not mandated for your kid to go to public school, for example, at least on a federal level. But the parents can still choose to do it. Another big one that's controversial is going to be fluoride in the water. I would strongly recommend, Utah has banned adding fluoride to the water. I recommend everyone do their homework on this. This is a very nuanced issue. And the fluoride being added to water is not pharmaceutical grade. It's actually toxic waste. Please do your own homework on that one before making a decision. Now, here's what's going to be a big deal. MAHA is very upset about this. This is an executive order that Donald Trump just passed regarding glyphosate. So I believe it was under the Defense Production Act that essentially said Big Ag has immunity for glyphosate, and glyphosate is known to cause cancer. MAHA is, let's just say, really, really, really upset about this. I'm upset about this, but when you put it in context with all the wins, it's a pretty big loss. That's going to be a big issue. Another big issue, and this is a loser. You're going to lose half the country no matter which way it goes. It's going to be mifepristone, which is the morning after pill. So, of course, a lot of people on the right want him to roll back anything that allows you to send this medication in the mail, the laws that allow this. And then the right is going to go bonkers and have abortion trucks at their voting booth where they can put them again. Sorry to sound so crude, but I mean, we literally saw that at the DNC, and there's no way to win that one. You're going to piss off half the country. So that's a really fast and broad rundown. If I could give you one more thing that I forgot that I think a lot of your listeners will appreciate. Former head of HHS, Xavier Becerra, wanted to remove all age restrictions for gender-affirming care. Kennedy is now banning it for children under the age of 18 if any medical institution that does this wants to get Medicare and Medicaid funds. So a lot to think about. Sorry for that rant.
No, I think that's so brilliant. Thank you so much for explaining that, Jillian. It's so interesting to me the way you point out that this question of birth control is one that it does really divide the country. But To me, the MAHA movement is much more on that kind of libertarian side of things, the kind of, you know, I'm in charge of my body and what goes into it, which would mean that it was more kind of on the pro-choice side of things. No, I mean, is the MAHA movement itself split between pro-choice and pro-life, or does it lean more left on the question of abortion? What would you say?
Gosh, I honestly think it is split. It really hasn't been an integral issue for MAHA, but it is going to be an integral issue for the midterms, and it directly impacts Kennedy and the role he plays in the administration. So regardless of what MAHA is focused on, which is going to be things like lowering drug costs and removing prior authorizations for care through your insurance company, this is absolutely going to be a front and center issue, in my opinion.
And you did a great job of laying out the pros and the cons. You're obviously somebody who looks at all the evidence before making a decision. Just give us the prognostication, 2026, is MAHA going to turn out for Trump and for the Republicans or not?
I think they will, but I also think people are realistic about the fact that nothing is perfect and it becomes a conversation of lesser evils. At least that's how I'm approaching it.
So, and in your view, do the pros outweigh the cons with this administration?
Definitely. Unquestionably, they do. But I would be lying to you if I pretended like everything's going as planned. We got everything we wanted. Of course not. But when I look at the alternative, let me just tell you, Kamala Harris didn't even agree to sit down with RFK, which I think was a terrible decision. And having said that, when you look at, again, the prior head of HHS and everything that has gone wrong under former administrations, people are sicker than ever. The country is heavier than ever. Nothing was working. So we're moving in the right direction, albeit at a slower pace than I think people would like, losing very critical battles along the way. But I think overall, MAHA is winning the war.
Jillian Michaels, God bless and protect you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.